If we was to fight right now on the streets, I'll break your fucking neck. And that's on my kids. And you know it, I know it, and the whole world know it. And I'm not talking about no fighting in the ring. If me and you was to fight outside, I will break your neck.
Look, when the talking stopped and fists started flying, everything changed in an instant. Crawford had been sitting there composed as always, but something in Tank's attitude finally pushed him over the edge. He got right up in Tank's face with ice-cold intent, then delivered a hard shove that echoed through the entire studio. That was his line, in the sand. A moment of pure disrespect that demanded an answer. Tank wasn't about to back down either. Rage took over, and he swung back with real force, sparking a full-blown brawl that had security scrambling from every direction to break it up. This was completely unscripted television at its finest, the kind of raw confrontation that had the entire combat sports world glued to their screens. No promotion, no fake drama, just pure animosity playing out live for everyone to witness. So here's how this whole explosion started brewing. Two absolute monsters in the ring, Terence Crawford and Gervonta Tank Davis, going at each other's throats on live television. This wasn't some manufactured beef designed to generate social media clicks or sell future pay-per-views. What we witnessed was authentic bad blood, caught on camera as it happened, broadcasting every heated exchange to millions of viewers. Boxing fans got exactly what they'd been craving without even knowing it. A genuine moment that instantly rewrote the entire conversation around what's possible in this sport right now. Somebody just took an impossible matchup and made it feel like destiny.
How does a fight with you and Terence Crawford look? 147? I tapped that trend. You know he going to sleep.
We're diving deep into what ignited this massive confrontation today. You'll discover who came out on top when everything calmed down and rational thought returned. But more crucially, we're exploring exactly why fight fans everywhere are suddenly screaming for a bout that seemed totally out of reach until now. Tank versus Crawford represents two absolute forces from completely separate universes, now heading toward each other in what could reshape the entire landscape. This goes way beyond just another fight. We're looking at a career-defining war born from genuine hatred. These fighters have never shared the ring before, and that's not by accident or some random coincidence. Their careers have been kept apart by the usual boxing maze of promotional politics, scheduling conflicts, and weight class complications. One completely dominates the lightweight scene without question. The other has conquered multiple divisions, an accomplishment that puts him among boxing's absolute elite. But for the past several months, whispers and increasingly bold challenges have been escalating between their teams, building pressure that was always going to reach a breaking point. This confrontation just lit the match on a powder keg. Tank has been seriously flirting with jumping up to 147 pounds recently. He's been declaring with total certainty that he can demolish anyone waiting for him at that weight, backing up the talk with carefully crafted social media posts, fearless public statements, and aggressive interview appearances. He actually had the nerve to claim he could knock out a slick southpaw like Crawford with one clean shot. Just think about the incredible confidence, or maybe pure arrogance, required to say something like that when you're discussing one of the most skilled pound-for-pound talents alive today. That kind of challenge echoed throughout boxing circles, making fantasy suddenly feel achievable.
For real.
Crawford stayed ice-cold through all the mayhem and chatter surrounding this brewing storm, handling it exactly like he always does, with complete composure. He kept pointing out to anyone who would pay attention that Tank simply hasn't fought the same caliber of elite opposition throughout his professional journey. Even during Crawford's championship reign, when he was taking extended breaks, the friction between these two continued bubbling underneath everything, never quite exploding, but constantly intensifying. Crawford's response was measured, strategic mental warfare that made Tank's loud proclamations look desperate by comparison, setting up the inevitable collision. Tank made it personal when he admitted, "The guy just rubs me wrong," cutting straight through all the promotional nonsense. This transcended simple competitive rivalry between fighters. He genuinely couldn't stand Crawford's personality. Tank viewed Crawford as pretentious and fake, claiming Bud hid behind his security team and crew of supporters. He believed Crawford would behave completely differently in confrontational moments without that protective barrier around him. Tank respected Crawford's fighting ability, but found his entire character irritating on every level. This honest emotional hatred proved their conflict went far deeper than marketing campaigns designed to sell tickets. Two personalities that simply couldn't coexist peacefully, creating inevitable friction.
A chance to be around Floyd Mayweather. He be calling me now, he be texting me now. The whole last camp, I was in Floyd's gym. He closing down the gym for me. I'm working pads with him. He working pads with me and my brother Kelvin. Me and Kelvin sparring in front of Floyd, like he coaching us. Like now it's like, damn, Shakur, Terence, and Floyd now. So, man, I honestly think that's God. Like, if you really look at it, what professional fighters out here just have a strong circle as strong as like ours. Like you got the best prospect. You got Shakur, then you got Terence Crawford, and then outside of our circle, we got Floyd Mayweather also tapping in with us. You know what I mean? Like our circle is really crazy. It's really crazy, and it shows to where when we fight, it's always our opponents. It's like it's never a close fight. Even with Terence, it's never a close.
The spark that set off the live television meltdown came during what seemed like routine discussion about pound-for-pound rankings on a popular boxing show. Crawford maintained his typical calm demeanor, but the moment Tank's name entered the conversation, months of buried tension erupted into open hostility immediately. Tank started talking over everyone and pushing his agenda aggressively, but Crawford came back even harder with surgical precision, showing zero intimidation through his voice or posture. He made it abundantly obvious that backing down wasn't in his vocabulary under any circumstances. What started as panel discussion quickly devolved into personal warfare, creating the perfect storm for physical violence.
There was some kind of crazy trash talk with Gervonta and Terence Crawford recently. And one of the things that I've always kind of noticed is most of the time, one of the things that's kind of off limits is families. Like you usually don't.
Yes.
You know.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, and so I wanted to kind of understand what your thoughts was about like some of those comments that was made. I think it was about Terence's wife. What, like in your mind, where? Because obviously, like you've been in this sport.
I think Terence Crawford right now in the sport of boxing is the pound for pound best fighter in the sport of boxing right now. It's good to see him in the position that he's in. I think he has a beautiful family. I think he has a beautiful wife, a beautiful queen, a black queen. And there's nothing better than a black woman in this world. That's just my opinion. We're all entitled to our opinion.
After everyone recovered from the initial surprise, the combat sports community rallied around one massive question that dominated every conversation. Where do we go from here? Who actually dominated the war of words between Tank and Crawford? The verdict from nearly every observer was overwhelmingly clear. Terence Crawford destroyed Tank completely, and it wasn't remotely competitive. His measured, intelligent responses completely dismantled Tank's emotional outbursts, revealing fundamental weaknesses in his approach. This wasn't just temporary entertainment for social media. It became the catalyst that transformed an impossible dream fight into urgent necessity, forcing the entire boxing establishment to completely reconsider current matchmaking priorities. The aftermath solidified overwhelming demand for a showdown that now feels absolutely inevitable. The controversy keeps circling back to that questionable Tank versus Roach decision that changed everything. Gervonta Davis's defeat against Lamont Roach, or what any honest scorecard would have called a clear defeat, wasn't simply another result on his professional record. It created massive ripple effects throughout boxing and seriously damaged his credibility in ways that might be permanent. Roach himself was convinced he'd done more than enough to earn the victory, maintaining he had controlled the action throughout this bout raised the first serious doubts about Tank's supposed invincibility. Doubts that Crawford would eventually weaponize with devastating effectiveness. The specter of that controversial outcome continues haunting Tank's reputation today. The sequence that fundamentally changed how people viewed Tank happened in the 9th round when Lamont Roach caught him completely off guard, dropping him flush with a crisp combination that sent the crowd into absolute hysteria. Nobody anticipated seeing Tank flat on his back like that. He went down midway through the round, yet somehow it wasn't officially scored as a knockdown. Tank's explanation became legendary for all the wrong reasons. He insisted hair product had dripped into his eyes, causing temporary blindness and impairing his vision. This pathetic excuse only amplified the controversy, making his stumble appear more like desperate damage control after genuine vulnerability was exposed. Any reasonable interpretation of boxing rules would have counted that as a clear knockdown without debate. Roach connected cleanly, his punches landed precisely on target. And Tank's glove obviously touched the canvas, which represents the textbook definition of a knockdown in professional boxing. Yet somehow the referee completely ignored it and failed to initiate the mandatory count, sparking immediate outrage. Anyone watching with functioning eyeballs could see exactly what transpired in that ring. There was no concealing the truth of what happened. Roach looked sharper during every exchange, outworked Tank in practically every round, connected with cleaner shots consistently, and demonstrated obviously superior determination throughout the entire fight. The official decision couldn't alter the reality of what everyone witnessed. Terence Crawford didn't sugarcoat his reaction to what he'd seen, calling out the obvious injustice on live television without worrying about political consequences or hurt feelings. He stated emphatically that the knockdown was completely legitimate, arguing that Roach got completely screwed out of proper recognition, while Tank was revealed to be far more beatable than his promotional machine wanted people to believe. Crawford unleashed multiple attacks, branding Tank as massively over-promoted by his management team and chronically underperforming when facing legitimate opposition. His public criticism from a fellow elite competitor was absolutely devastating to Tank's carefully managed public image, establishing Crawford's reputation as someone who speaks uncomfortable truths, regardless of consequences. The most painful part for Tank, and this had to be crushing psychologically, was his complete inability to mount any effective defense against Crawford's accurate observation. The boxing community watched this unfold in real time, and rather than supporting him or offering benefit of the doubt, they joined in questioning his legitimacy among the sport's elite level. Tank was reduced to offering weak justifications, acknowledging that it's completely on me, I definitely should have done much better. His standing took one of the most significant hits of his professional career, and boxing has an extremely long memory for these defining moments. This exposed weakness created hunger for his redemption opportunity. Perhaps that explains exactly why a showdown with Crawford is no longer empty promotional rhetoric or wishful thinking. It's transformed into an absolutely essential event that the entire sport desperately needs to witness. Tank now urgently needs to rehabilitate himself, to deliver a definitive performance that silences every critic and shuts down everyone questioning his entire career trajectory. There's genuinely only one path to accomplish that goal effectively. Stand across the ring from the consensus #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. He absolutely must demonstrate conclusively that he still deserves recognition at the absolute pinnacle of professional boxing, and wasn't simply a product of strategic opponent selection. Everything about his legacy now depends on this opportunity. Crawford played the political game brilliantly, neither completely rejecting Tank, nor immediately granting him the title shot he desperately wanted. Instead, he proposed that Tank prove himself against Keyshawn Davis first as a legitimate test of his skills. Let's be completely honest about this situation. Keyshawn represents far more than just another easy opponent or confidence-building exercise. He's a genuine threat to practically anyone competing at that level currently. Someone with legitimate talent who could defeat numerous highly ranked contenders. This represented Crawford establishing clear conditions, a strategic challenge designed to evaluate Tank's true abilities before offering him the opportunity to face the undisputed champion. It's a test Tank cannot simply ignore or dismiss casually. Keyshawn Davis brings serious credentials and represents a legitimate obstacle with authentic skills, supported financially and tactically by Floyd Mayweather personally, and coached with clear strategic focus by experienced professionals who understand championship-level preparation. He's genuinely hungry to establish his own place in boxing history rather than simply serve as a stepping stone for established stars. Keyshawn trains within an impressive circle, working alongside elite prospects like Shakur Stevenson and even doing sparring sessions with Crawford himself. He's definitely not just preparation work, he's a calculated challenge specifically designed to reveal any remaining flaws in Tank's overall game. This potential fight, if it actually materializes, will provide far more insight than any amount of social media warfare. Should Tank accept this challenge and win decisively, the anticipation for the eventual Crawford bout will reach levels rarely seen in modern boxing, becoming one of the most significant events the sport can deliver. However, if he declines and avoids the fight, or even worse, starts making excuses, all those lingering doubts will solidify into permanent truths that define how history remembers him. Don't overlook Floyd Mayweather operating behind the scenes either, because he represents the ultimate unpredictable element in this entire situation. His fingerprints are everywhere, quietly pulling strings from the shadows, making this whole drama even more fascinating and unpredictable. While Floyd and Tank are publicly feuding and apparently not communicating directly, Floyd's impact is obvious throughout every aspect of this developing story. Keyshawn trains directly in his gym. Crawford maintains deep respect for him as an all-time legendary fighter, and Tank continues struggling to escape Floyd's enormous shadow while establishing independent credibility, even as he feels increasingly constrained by constant comparisons and unrealistic expectations. Floyd previously functioned as the connection between these separate boxing worlds, someone capable of arranging major fights through simple conversation, but now observes from outside, potentially planning his next calculated intervention. Floyd also commented publicly when the Tank-Crawford conflict went viral, making his position perfectly clear regarding which fighter he supported in this dispute, and it definitely wasn't Tank. Tank interpreted Floyd's statements as personal betrayal, exactly as you might predict, and made the serious error of dragging Crawford's family members into his trash-talking, which violated major unwritten rules of professional boxing etiquette. That's when Floyd Mayweather, Tank's former guide and the man who helped launch his professional career, publicly endorsed Crawford instead, delivering an unmistakable message to Tank and everyone paying attention. He had overstepped boundaries, shown disrespect to the wrong people, and forfeited important institutional support. The conflict between Gervonta Davis and Terence Crawford is legitimately just beginning, and everything will get significantly more complicated before it gets settled inside the ring. Here's what's really important to understand though. Crawford's primary attention and energy isn't actually focused on this drama with Davis, regardless of how much media coverage it's generating currently. He's completely locked in on Canelo Alvarez, a matchup that transcends simple name recognition or financial gain. This represents the ultimate test, the victory that could establish him among the greatest fighters in boxing history if he can pull off the ups. Crawford operates through strategy, patience, and legacy consideration, maintaining focus on what truly matters for long-term success. While Tank creates chaos outside the ring through social media posts and inflammatory interviews, Crawford refuses to let distractions interfere when he's preparing for the most significant fight of his professional life. That requires extraordinary mental strength and discipline. The psychological warfare between Crawford and Canelo is already intensifying in ways you can practically feel, with calculated stare-downs and mind games being executed at the highest possible level. Crawford recognizes this as his opportunity to create genuine boxing history. This is about achieving three-time undisputed champion status, an accomplishment that would permanently inscribe his name among boxing's immortals. Crawford views the Canelo fight as much more than temporary headlines or media attention. It's about creating authentic history in a sport that doesn't award legendary recognition easily. This kind of intense focus and unwavering commitment makes everything else happening around him, including Tank's theatrics and social media campaigns, appear trivial and meaningless in comparison. He's prepared to demonstrate he possesses the technical skills, devastating power, and mental strength necessary to defeat anyone, anywhere, under any circumstance. The real test of championship character isn't simply about winning fights, it's about choosing which battles deserve your complete dedication and energy.